This video is going to be my first ride on the 2017 Giant Trance Advanced 1. This video will supplement the first look review that I did. I was going to combine these into one video, but that one got a little long, so I broke it up into two videos. So I'll do something that I've never done before, and that's a review from the saddle of a bike. So I'm going to talk about the bike as I ride. And kind of a secondary topic of this will be what I think of 27.5 wheels after being on 29 for 3 or 4 months on a cross-country bike. So I'm going to hop on the bike and we'll get some riding in. And the temperature today is in the upper 50s. Had some rain yesterday, sunny. So perfect weather for the first ride on this bike. Let's get going. So other than riding around the driveway to get the suspension set up, this is the first time I've taken this bike out on the trails. Now, as a disclaimer, these trails don't have anything that's going to really test the limits of this bike. That'll have to be done on a different type of trail system. This trail is cross-country, rolling terrain, flat kind of at the bottom, but then we'll do a climb and get up to the trails that have much more constant elevation gain. Not a big difference in elevation gain, but it is constantly rolling. And I'm shooting this with the GoPro Hero 5 chest mount, and I have a windscreen on it. Like I said, this is the first review I've done from the saddle of a bike. And I know the audio is probably not going to be cinema quality by any means, but it's a cool perspective. We'll see how it turns out. Leave some comments on this video to let me know how you like this kind of review, as opposed to just showing the bike sitting outside my house. So we're going to cross the road here and we'll enter the state park where the trail system begins. And yes, I have a state park pass, which is why I'm not stopping at the gate. All right, let's go right here. Before I get further into this video, I want to give props out to my local bike shop, Bike Works of Gainesville. If you're looking for a Giant, an authorized Giant dealer, and you're in the north central Florida area, or make it to this area, the shop I recommend. They can order any Giant for you, and really good guys to deal with. So yeah, there's my props to my local shop. My cross-country bike not only has 29-inch wheels, but much less travel. So that's 100 mil in the front, 90 in the back. This one's 150 mil in the front and 140 in the back. A little downhill here. Let's get this thing going. Yeah, it's going to take me a while to get used to how much traction these tires have compared to my cross-country tires, which are Schwalbe Rocket Rons. These knobby Nicks have a ton of traction. I'm running about 18 psi in the front. Front's a 2.4. Can actually drop it a little bit. The back's got about 20. The back's a 2.25 on this bike. So all right, I'm going to shut the camera down and then film the first climb and kind of comment on how the bike climbs, and then we'll hit some trail that's got some roots and downhills, and we'll see how it does on those. Obviously not the longer downhills that I'll be doing on my trips to North Georgia, North Carolina, Tennessee, which is where this bike's going to see a lot of action. So, all right, I'll pick it back up on my first climb. All right, coming out of the single track onto the fire road, which is the first big climb here on these trails. Starts off gradual and gets, I don't know, 10% at the most. Not too steep. Not the longest climb you'll have in Florida. So I've got the rear shock on the middle setting for the compression damping. Same with the front, it's in the middle. I may switch the rear over to the firmest setting as we get up this climb. See how it feels. One thing I'll comment is this is a comfortable saddle. There are no pressure points. It's kind of a flat design, and the saddle feels good on this bike. All right. Bike feels good on the climb, doesn't feel sluggish. Sometimes I get on a trail bike after a cross-country bike and it feels heavy and sluggish on a climb. This one's feeling good. I'm gonna switch the rear shock for the firmest setting, which is, by the way, is not fully locked out like my cross-country bike does, but it's really firm. I'd probably use that middle setting on a really long climb unless it's just really choppy, especially on fire roads. Wow, good climbing bike. My virtual partner finished. Yeah, this isn't the 30-minute climbs I'll have up in the mountains, but just a little sample. So far, so good. I didn't feel too heavy or sluggish, like I said. All right, let's hit some single track. Okay, heading into the single track. This just really rolling. Got some tight turns on it. The cornering on this bike compared to my cross-country bike is a little bit slower and more deliberate. That's a good thing. My cross-country bike, you barely touch the bars and it turns. This bike's going to be a lot more stable than my cross-country bike. So that's what you want on a rough, fast descent. Don't want a twitchy bike. Even at high speeds, slacker angles can feel twitchy. So the bike feels really balanced. It's a really good feeling bike. Top tube's a little longer than my previous Trance. Feels like I'm a little bit more forward, which is a good thing. I've heard people say they wish the seat angle was a little steeper for climbs, but I don't feel at all like this bike is too slack in the seat angle so far. The ultimate test will be a really long climb in the mountains. The reason you want a steep seat angle is so that the front end doesn't wander around as you climb. The climb I just did isn't steep enough to see if the front end's gonna wander. Oh yeah. Tight section here. Man, these tires have a ton of traction. I could probably let a couple PSI out too and even increase the traction. I will say the rear end on this bike feels really firm when you're pedaling, in a good way, not It still releases really well on bumps, but really good pedaling platform on this bike. On these trails, I would just leave the rear shock in the middle setting on the compression. I'll probably open it up on some of the descents fully and see how it goes. But oh, there's a deer. There's another deer. This place is practically a petting zoo. These deer are so used to bikes, they'll barely move off the trail. Some of them will just stand right next to the trail and just watch you as you go by. All right, so the wheels, the carbon wheels on this bike, kind of what I remember from my previous Trance. They're really precise. Enough suspension travel that it's hard to really say if they're ultra stiff vertically, but yeah, they feel really good. This bike accelerates really well for a trail bike. Oh, gotta log down. Had a big storm through here this past weekend. Really high winds. A lot of leaves on the trail this time of year. Feel like these knobby nicks poke right through these leaves. Much better than my cross-country tires. The rear suspension on this bike feels bottomless. That's coming off a cross-country bike, of course, but gosh, this bike feels plush. It's plush, but it's also got a nice pedaling platform. Exactly what you want in a trail bike. Feels so steady on those downhills. Okay, what the rear end of the bike also comes around nicely when you're cornering. Complements to the shorter chain stays. All right, so we got a little descent coming up here, and it's got some roots on it. So I open up the front and rear suspension. It's kind of tight. You can't really go crazy on it, but I'll right before I start it, I'll drop the seat post too. Man, this rear suspension is just so plush when it's opened up. Here we go. We'll just pretend that was 20 minutes and not 20 seconds. But yeah, felt good on those roots. Really good with the suspension. I already reached down and lock out or not lock it out, but put the rear back in the middle. We'll leave the front open. He's got a longer descent coming up. The lever is not that hard to reach on the rear shock. I adjust my rear shock compression a lot on a ride, especially up in the mountains. Probably not on these trails, but not as easy to reach as the remote lockout on my cross-country bike, but not too hard to reach at all. So that's good. even though the angles are pretty slack on this bike, the front end still feels like it turns really easily. That's complemented by the 27.5 wheels. So speaking of that, the 27.5 wheels, I just love 27.5. I love my 29er, but I love 27.5 too. They feel like the bike just kind of lays over better in the corner than 29. Your center of gravity is a little lower, and this feels like you can lay the bike over. And you know, the slack angles keep the bike really steady in the corners. The 34 fork on this bike feels awesome. It's so stiff. I'm a light guy, but I still notice the extra stiffness. And of course, it's got the wider front axle, the boost front axle. So all that carries over into a bike that's really precise and accurate when you're cornering. Doesn't waver off its line, doesn't get deflected. When you have a flimsy bike, bumps and rocks kind of will deflect the bike and take it off its line. Decent little descent here. Drop the post again. I forgot how low your center of gravity gets with a dropper post. It's been about 5 or 6 months since I've ridden with a dropper post. Almost overshoot the corners. Takes some getting used to. All right, put the rear shock back in the middle. Here's a climb that's fairly steep. Kind of I call a punchy climb. Just takes powering up it. Yeah, feels really firm when I'm pedaling hard. Again, I got the rear in the middle right now. Gosh, so many trees down from that storm. By the way, the rear brake with the 180 rotor feels good. Definitely wouldn't want to put a 180 on my cross-country bike. Not enough tire grip and suspension travel to get good traction, but feels good on this one. Another steep climb here. It's hard to judge steepness from a GoPro. Didn't do it justice, but this is about probably a 10% grade for single track. Well, final judgment will be made on my first mountain ride, but so far I'd give this bike 2 thumbs up for climbing, and 2 thumbs up and a big toe for descending. The best way to describe this bike is you feel like you can get rowdy on it and stay in control, which is what all the geometry tweaks and carbon and good suspension helps you do. So you get what you pay for. I know $5 grand isn't cheap for a bicycle, but for a carbon frame, Fox factory suspension with Kashima coating, carbon rims, full XT, dropper seat post. You look at any other bike company out there and probably going to be paying $1 or $2 grand more for a level like this. So one thing I love about Giant is the value that you get in their bikes. I love my Niner and I love my Giants. They're both good bikes. This section's a little chunky from hogs tearing up the trail. But the suspension feels really smooth, super smooth. All right, this is the last climb that I'll show. This one is sort of steep, but I'm not anywhere near that 46.2 in the back. That one will not be tested here. I think 46 is all you would need on this bike. The Shran Eagle at 50. I don't know if I'd ever use that. And I'm not paying $400 for a cassette. Sorry for the rant. All right, a fun section coming up here. Got the rear suspension and front opened up all the way. God, this bike's fun. Some little corners coming up here. Test the cornering ability of the bike. God, so much traction. All right, time to wrap this video up. Throw in a few last comments here. One is, I didn't mention it in my first look, but a ton of water bottle clearance on the frame. My last Trance was really tight. I have a normal size water bottle with a ton of clearance, so that's a good thing. The tires feel awesome on this bike. Really low rolling resistance compared to the amount of traction that they provide. Again, another reason why I'm a fan of knobby Nicks. Shifting on the bike is pretty good. Still need to get the cables broken in a little bit, but really precise, really smooth. So yeah, the first ride shows me that this bike is going to be a winner for sure. Great climbing, great descending, and pretty it seems like it's a little faster on the flats than my previous Trance. I don't know why, but it's got really good acceleration on the flats and just feels really planted when you corner. Those last few corners felt so good. Here's this section has got some really big ruts in the grass. God, this feels like nothing on this bike. My cross country bike hits the travel limit really easily on that little last section there. So, all right. Like I said, let me know what you think about this style of review, how this works out for you compared to doing it from just behind the camera looking at the bike at my house. I'm also really curious to see if this windscreen minimizes the noise, the wind noise. See how my voice sounds on this. So this video is an experiment for me. All right, thanks for riding with me, and I'll follow this up later on with some more reviews. If this video turns out decent, I'll probably do the same thing on my first trip to the mountains in a couple months when it warms up a little bit. All right, I'll catch you in the next one. Thanks for watching.